Uh, Hello everyone. Hello, dear listeners of the SI4CARE podcast. Today we have a special guest, Professor Sokratis Papageorgiou, that has obtained the title of MD and PhD and is currently a neurologist and associate professor of neurology and neuropsychology at the first department of neurology, University of Athens Medical School. Professor Papageorgiou has vast international experience, has set up a cognitive neurology movement disorders inpatient and outpatient unit. He is currently working at the First University Department of Neurology at Ainitium Hospital and is in charge of the Memory, Cognitive Disorders and Rare Dementias Clinic and is also a consultant to several other hospitals. He's also the co-founder and co-director of the 3 years postgraduate training program in clinical neuropsychology and cognitive neurosciences. His many research interests and prominent publications and broad experience on research funded by European institutions. Professor Papageorgiou is also an active member of the Dementia Higher Artificial Function Subcommittee of the European Neurological Society and the European Academy of Neurology and has participated in several conferences, delivered several teaching courses and workshops, and functioned as a reviewer with numerous scientific journals. So first of all, Professor Papageorgiou, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you for your introduction. And we are working together since 1.5 years now, and I wish to thank you very much for your collaboration.
Thank you also, Professor, for your time, the opportunity to talk with you, discuss very important topics. So maybe I will start with the opening question. So dear Professor, can you maybe elaborate a bit on your personal previous experience regarding the elderly population?
Well, the first thing is that I'm a neurologist, and I'm a neurologist specialized in what we call behavioral or cognitive neurology. That means cognitive functions. That means that most of the patients with cognitive disorders are patients with dementia or at the pre-dementia stages due to neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's disease. And this is a very important thing for the elderly population because there is a significant percentage of elderly people who get Alzheimer's disease, get the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. So as a neurologist and mostly specialized in cognitive disorders, I'm in contact with many patients, elderly people with dementia or the pre-dementia stages. And in the same time, there are other neurodegenerative diseases that affect elderly people, like Parkinson's disease, which is not rare for the population of elderly people. So we get a certain number of people, which is about 1/4 of the people who are more than 65 years old. About 1/4 of them have cognitive disorders due to neurodegenerative or vascular reasons, or have movement disorders in the context of Parkinson's disease or normal pressure hydrocephalus, for example, which is a common disorder in the elderly.
Okay, thank you very much for such a detailed answer. I will then try to ask you, as the leader of project partner number 7, would you briefly present your organization, so the National and Kapodistrian University of Athens, maybe especially in terms, what are the strengths of your organization when you're talking to experience related to healthcare and dementia especially?
Well, our big project, as you know very well, Simon, was to try to work on the social innovation, what we call social innovation, for the healthcare in the elderly. So the healthcare in the elderly can be for various diseases, but It can be by promoting the prevention of diseases in the elderly. And this has to do with many diseases, of course, cardiac diseases, pulmonary diseases, diabetes, hypertension. But our main interest is in the prevention and the treatment of cognitive disorders, of the disorders that I mentioned before. So what we have tried to do in the context of the SI4CARE in the elderly was to implement a telemedicine network specialized to give the possibility for the elderly people to get examined by specialists, to give the possibility of people living in remote areas or areas with difficulties in accessibility to specialized centers, to give them the possibility to be examined so as to get an accurate diagnosis and also to be followed by specialists. So with my group, we are able now to examine people as neurologists, and we have psychiatrists who collaborates with us, and also we have the neuropsychologists who are doing the cognitive assessment. So what people or patients get is a high level medical care that would be really impossible to get. And with the collaboration with the national network of telemedicine that until now covers the whole area of the Aegean Sea, all the islands in the Aegean Sea, even the smallest island has a medical center, and there are stations dedicated to telemedicine. So we are able to cover all these areas and help people with cognitive disorders or movement disorders due mainly to degenerative diseases. This is our first work, and as it is an original work, but already applied since 1 year and a half. It got the prize of the Ministry of Digital Governance in Greece.
Congratulations on the prize. Everyone in the SI4CARE project is very happy that you managed to win it. And if we continue with that, maybe the question that is related to teamwork. So I know for a fact that you have a wonderful team, that you are working in a brilliant way, and that everything is under control. So maybe I would ask you, from the perspective of someone with a medical background, how important do you feel that teamwork actually is? And then as the leader of project partner number 7, how did you select the team members that are working with you on the project?
That's a good question. Well, I will start with my my assistant, my fellow neurologist, Thalia Gelopoulou, who is close, and she will show you also the prize. I think it's a good chance.
Here
That
is
was
the prize.
a surprise. And it's interesting to show that the prize, well, that's the name of the ministry and the prize, but you have to figure out, I think you, Simon, maybe you will understand quicker than we could understand. What does this mean?
I have no idea because I don't see it very well, sorry.
It's 0101. So it's the sign of digital technology, the binary.
Okay. The binary system. Okay.
Yes, yes.
Very, very creative.
We are lucky to have our minister, because beyond any political positions, Mr. Pierakakis, or Dr. Pierakakis, because he holds a PhD in informatics, he's doing an exceptional really work here in Greece, helping the citizens to live in a better way using the digital technology. So we soon will have, as he showed us during the ceremony, we will soon have an application on our mobile phones, and we will be able to use it for any interconnection with the state. For example, if you ask for a civil fiche d'état civil, I know it in French, fiche d'état civil. That means the certificate that you are registered as a citizen in your country or in your city. If you need that, you have to apply. So you will be able to apply from your mobile phone, and you will receive it in less than 24 hours in your mobile phone without going to the special centers to apply by hand. So that's the new digital world that we are approaching. So Thalia Gelopoulou is my neurologist, my very important assistant in the work. She's not only a neurologist, she has been working also with my fellow Professor Stefanis on Parkinson's disease. So she's an excellent clinician. And this is very important when you do telemedicine, because you must be able to take the information from the patient, not only verbally, but by his behavior and his movements, even if the image that you see is not of a high quality. Sometimes, you know, when the resolution is not good enough, you must be able to depict the picture of the patient. So the other co-workers is Yannis Papadriadafilou, the psychiatrist of the group, who is working 30 years now in psychiatry, but with a special interest in psychiatry of the dementias. So he's very keen with the evaluation of not only the cognitive, but also the behavioral modifications and alterations of the a patient's personality and character. And we have been doing research with the collaboration of the University of California at San Francisco since 20 years now. So I'm very happy to work with him. And in the group, we have two neuropsychologists, Dionysia Kondaxopoulou and Stella Fragiadaki, who have worked with me. They have completed their postgraduate training in neuropsychology, the third year master's degree in clinical neuropsychology, and also they have finished their PhD thesis with me. They are very experienced now neuropsychologists able to do an assessment via the internet. It's important. And also Evangelia Stanitsa, who will start her PhD degree, and she assists also the evaluation. So we have a group that covers all this field of clinical neurology, neuropsychiatry, and neuropsychology. So we feel confident that we can deal with the difficult cases, so to help people have the diagnosis and the follow-up without coming to Athens. And I think I should mention here also that we work also with hospitals in the big islands in the Aegean Sea, and we have an excellent collaboration with the Department of Neurology of the State Hospital in Rhodes. Rhodes, it's a big island. There are about 100,000 people living in Rhodes, 80,000. I think. And there is a small department of neurology with 2 residents, and we are running now a memory outpatient clinic via telemedicine, but with patients that are seen firstly from our co-neurologists in Rhodes, and then we are acting as a consultant. And why it is important? It is important because we can go beyond what is considered as telemedicine now. Going beyond means that not only we examine the patient, but we can ask our colleagues in Rhodes to perform examinations like a lumbar puncture, to take the CSF and to send the samples here in a Unitian hospital, so the specialized laboratory could perform tests that are done only in specialized centers. So, for example, a patient of 55 years old, if I remember well, was like this, with presenile dementia, that means younger than 65 years old, who had the picture of probable Alzheimer's disease. In that case, we were able to perform all the evaluation via this collaboration without having the patient to make the trip in Athens so as to have the lumbar puncture. That's important because we are going to a new era where every people in the periphery of a country, if they're in the remote areas, will be able, we hope, to have medical care of first quality.
Thank you very much, Professor, for such a detailed answer. Also very impressive, and I think that you are really well prepared for the podcast to share your knowledge with everyone. And I also know that you have a wonderful team that are always working, even in the night and at odd hours to complete everything that is necessary. Maybe I would try to ask you, as a recap up to this point, maybe how satisfied you are overall with the SI4CARE project, and if you see still some challenges that we will have to overcome until we successfully finish this project next year.
Well, a very difficult question. Here in Athens, I think we were all satisfied because we are starting having the sense why we work together, and that now we really hope that we will be able to create something. Each one of us, of course, thinks how he can develop his work. Just to give you an example, we were talking about telemedicine, but there is also the question of telecare, and how we could combine the prevention and the telecare with telemedicine. So the second pilot we are doing, for example, is the Tele Exercise for people beyond the age of 65, what we call elderly people. So we have succeeded to associate that, so to create the possibility of offering exercising through telehealth, and offer this to people that have already a cognitive disorder in the first stages of dementia, to offer a kind of treatment, because exercising is a valid treatment for cognitive disorder. So then our ambition is to help the centers in other countries, in the centers of the Adrian region, to create the same thing in their countries, in their centers, in their society. So we have the know-how and we can help. And if each one of us help the other countries, the other centers, I think we will be able to create a network that will help not only the patients that are followed, but also other patients who will integrate in the whole countries. So it's too big as an ambition, but I think we have exchanged a lot of ideas, and now a lot of data. That's very important.
Very interesting answer again. Maybe I would try to ask you now something that is more related to your personal background. So your experience is heavily related to dementia, to healthcare. Can you maybe tell us how did you start your career in healthcare in dementia?
Well, we have to go back many years. Since I was a resident in La Salpêtrière Hospital in Paris, I was working with Professor Laplan, who's still, he's very old now, but he's still active intellectually. And Bruno Dubois was a young professor there. Bruno Dubois is a neurologist who signs as a first name the diagnostic criteria for Alzheimer's disease. He has done a lot of work on Parkinson's disease, but mostly on Alzheimer's and rare dementias and in neuropsychology in France. I was very lucky to work with him. And well, during my residency, I had also a training in neuropsychology. I completed a master's degree in neuropsychology, and then I had my PhD thesis on disorders of memory, not in dementia in epileptic patients, but it is still disorders of memory. So my interest was in neuropsychology, and in the beginning of the 90s, there was an increase of interest in dementia. And this, because we have, in every developed country, we had more and more cases of of dementia due to the aging of the population. And then by the mid-90s and late 90s, the drugs were coming. First was Tacrin, then it was Donepezil, then some others followed. So dementia, the interest for dementia was motivated by two reasons. First, we saw that it is a very common disorder, mainly due to Alzheimer's disease. So it's not a senile dementia. That means that every people will get it, but it was a defined disease with a defined neuropathology. So we had to diagnose and try to treat it. So that was the era of Alzheimer's disease, the 90s. And so it was frequent. And the second is that we had a treatment. And so the memory clinics were starting developing in many countries. I find it very interesting because it's a frequent disease. But my main interest is also to diagnose what is not Alzheimer's disease. That means the atypical cases. That means cases with a rapid progression, where you have to start a treatment as soon as you can, because there are some treatable causes also. So in the same time, I have been working with degenerative diseases, but also with the atypical cases of other diseases, trying to give a treatment. So I would say that it's obvious, looking at my work, that I don't want to do the same thing all the time. So I want to cover a larger field. But of course, if you're trying to cover a larger field, then you have to pay attention not to miss the profound work. So it's difficult to associate this, but I think we are, people at my age are maybe the last ones who were able to have a large spectrum in their work. And more and more, we are obliged to focus on our work. To give an advice would be to the younger people, would be try to focus. But in the same time, you have to keep your mind, your eyes open to see the big view in the same time. It's difficult, but you have to see always the big view, but try also to focus in the same time. You cannot focus in 5 times in the same time.
Very, very interesting and detailed answer again. If I move to my next question, I would ask you, given your experience in working with numerous organizations, different projects, maybe how do you see that SI4CARE is different with the projects that you were working in the past? And a follow-up to that question, so how do you see it that it can improve this project, the well-being of individuals in the society in the Adrian region?
Very interesting question, Simon, because personally, what I was used to do was to do research. Well, I'm a clinician, of course, so I'm giving care to patients. I'm an educator. As a professor, I have to give lectures and organize the education of young doctors, of course. But when I do research and I have collaborations in research programs. And this was my first Interreg project. So it took me some time to understand what it is really an Interreg project. And I could say that in the beginning, I could understand nothing. I was saying, what's that thing? Are we going to create policies for the European Union? I'm not a minister. I don't work the ministry. I'm a clinician. I'm doing research. What does this has to do? And I was also afraid that what I was talking about, dementia, cognitive disorders in the elderly, would be really incomprehensible for you. And I was really surprised, very good surprised that you understand. You are clever guys, so you understand what I was saying. And I understood that finally I'm not so stupid, and I can also understand what does it mean to form some policies. And this interdisciplinary work that we have been doing together, I think it's excellent, and possibly it's possible it's rare to find. So people who are doing research and people who are dealing with policies. And this could be viewed as a research laboratory, a small research laboratory, whether, for example, this interdisciplinary work could be used for the general question of health.
In your answer, you already mentioned something that is related to my next question. So policy making, you said that you're not a minister and it was particularly difficult for you. But now that you have gained some new experience, I would say, what would your recommendation be? How can we approach towards making policies in specific countries? What is the most important thing in your opinion?
Well, first thing is that we have to understand the language of the politicians and how they think. Because as scientists, we think that we have to prove from our data and that we must have solid data in order to propose a solution. But in fact, waiting until you get solid data, if you wait until that, then you won't propose anything. So we have to be able to propose things even if we are not able to create methodologically 100% good data. Just to give an example, I am sure that if we look strictly with a scientific thought, what we have created, the questionnaire we have created about the accessibility for healthcare in our countries. When we look at the questionnaire, we could say that it is not, methodologically, it's not excellent. So we should create something better, and in a better way, we should have more time so to prove the validity of that questionnaire. You agree with me, I suppose.
Yes, I agree that from a scientific point of view, it is a bit different than what we are used to, I would say.
Yes. But in the same time, we have to admit that it is probably the first questionnaire about the accessibility issues in healthcare for the elderly people. So we are now able to propose specific things. We are able to show that the accessibility to new technologies, for example, is very low. And we have data for that. Even if methodologically the questionnaire is not excellent. So I think the main issue is that we are able to propose policies because we have the data.
I agree, and I also think that the work from your team and especially Demos shows in a very nice way which are the most problematic areas, what needs to be improved. But now I would maybe focus on the perspective of your country, so Greece. And if we talk about the elderly population, so we can imagine that probably the most typical solution is when they encounter some sort of problem, like dementia, that they are eventually put in an institution, so to say. But on the other hand, what we are also talking within the project is how to keep them engaged, involved in their own home environment, so their own community. So basically my question would be, can you maybe explain what is the situation regarding community care in Greece? What are your opinions, thoughts? How do you see this field, so to say, evolving in the future?
Well, there is a lot of work that has been done in Athens and Thessaloniki with the Association for Alzheimer's Disease, and also some centers working in the society, not in private, in the public domain. And so there's a considerable development of centers for elderly people, even cognitively normal, but mostly specialized for cognitive disorders, for people with cognitive disorders. But there are a lot of things that have to be done in the future. For example, we are still in the situation where if somebody gets dementia, then he must be aided by his family. If he has no family, there is no structured healthcare facility to help him stay at home. Where in some municipalities there are some let's say pioneering work that has been done, but it is rare to have this. And then for people that stay home with their families, it's the family who has to pay for assistance. People, they don't get aid. Well, the state can deliver a certain amount of money, but it is a very small amount of money that does not cover the need. So still, it has been counted that the family has to pay about €1,000 per month in order to care for the patient that they keep at home. So there's a lot of work to do there, because there are some centers, few, really few, compared to the population, compared to the patients. So there are some centers where patients can spend some hours, let's say 3 hours, 2 times per week. But the patients need everyday assistance for every day, first. And second, there must be somebody to take them to these centers. So it's a lot of time, even for the families, to take their patients at these centers. So there are really a lot of things that have to be done in order to say that we have a good system of assistance for elderly people with dementia. And I think it's the same for every country in the Adrian region, because the results of the questionnaire were about the same.
I think this is also perhaps another recommendation for policy making. But now I would also like to move to another topic that is probably more fascinating to you, given that you also already mentioned telecare, telemedicine. With the disruption of the COVID-19 pandemic, I think it also accelerated the development related to telecare, telemedicine. And again, given your experience, given your functioning in the field of healthcare, so to say, how do you see the future of telecare, the telemedicine development in the next, I would say, I don't know, 5 to 10 years? How do you see this field will evolve?
Well, I think that the pandemic gave us the chance to advance in large steps now. We need to do a jump now, not a step, but really a jump. The use of new technologies is compulsory now. And what we have to pass from the studies that have shown that the new technologies can assist to the application. Because it's always like this, there is a big gap between the research results and the application. So now we have to go to the application. For example, the assisted living. My friend Panos Bamidis, professor of medical informatics and medical physics in the University of Thessaloniki, that I think you have already met, at least via the internet, has been working in the question of assisted living some 15 years now. But there are no applications for people. So we have to develop that. And what I was talking about before, about the Tele Exercise. The Tele Exercise, it's a kind of application which is feasible. I mean, you have the specialist, the physiotherapist, for example, who has a group of patients or elderly people, and in front of a large screen, he has his 5-6 people in the group. People are at their homes. They are exercising together. So you help the sociability of the people. You don't isolate them, but you take profit in the same time of telehealth. And people are really enthusiastic about this experience. So this is something that it is easy to do, and we have to progress on that. Then other kinds of help via tele assistance, for example, is the advising people at their homes how they could live together, discussing with people. It's difficult to take patients with their families once a month to discuss with them about their problem. But if you have a psychologist who is able to connect with them and discuss once a week, even for half an hour, about their problems, then you will solve a lot of problems without difficulties of transport. So what do you need? You need the accessibility of the internet, and that's all. And remember what Agis Tsouros, who was working as a chief in the World Health Organization, chief for the healthcare services in the countries all around the world. The very important thing that he told us is that the first question he was asking when he was introduced to a country and the ministers of health were showing him what they have created, the first question he asked them was whether these facilities were accessible to all the citizens. And that's the very important thing. Do the elderly people have access to the internet? I mean, it doesn't make sense to discuss about health care now for the elderly without giving to the elderly people the possibility to have access to the doctors, the nurses, to the psychologists, to the social workers via the internet. And this is the main thing that we have to develop in the future in the 2 following years. And we are able to do that. It doesn't make a sense to discuss about the internet and the optical fiber, for example, if we don't make the internet accessible to all people in the country.
I think that your colleague from the World Health Organization gave a very interesting lecture in Athens. I remember that, also the part regarding the accessibility for the citizens. But now we are talking for a long time, so I don't want to hold you up. I think that also our listeners would like to hear something interesting, maybe about Professor Papageorgiou when you're not only working. So if you have maybe any interesting hobbies or something similar that you like to do in your free time.
Well, I have 2 things that my hobbies are. I have started since I was young. It's not because I'm growing old now, but my 2 main hobbies are sports, mainly swimming, long distance swimming or a competitive swimming also. Masters championship. So, and we know that the exercise is physical exercise is the first thing to do for the prevention of dementia. So we have one more reason to do that. The second thing, I love music, so I was very happy to give you the surprise here in Athens to play my mandolin while Guido was singing the Italian songs and songs from the Balkan also, isn't it, Simon?
Yes.
And next thing we will be together we will play music and sing together, because we know very well that arts in general, arts are very important for the well-being. And I'll go back to our ancestors who were not considering we are talking about the Athenian democracy, but it is very interesting to go and see how they were living. No, there is not only the question of democracy, of the equal rights and the equal contribution also to the state of Athens at the time, but we have also to see how they were living. They were exercising regularly in the gymnasium. Gymnasium means the place where people are nude because they were doing sports, wrestling, weightlifting, etc. It was rather compulsory to exercise because it was part of their lives. And at the same time, they were singing. They were playing music. That was part of their lives. So we have to integrate these things in our lives if we want to live better, because the objective is to live better and to be satisfied from your way of living, isn't it?
I certainly hope so. I also like sports.
I know very well that you exercise, you like sports, and you have one more thing, you love the animals. And
yes.
So
yes.
that makes you feel that man is not the only creature on earth, and we have to respect also the animals. We have to interfere with them also emotionally. So I was happy to see your pictures or your
And I was very happy to meet your dog in person.
Oh yes, yes.
Maybe our last question for today, it's a very simple one. Your key takeaway, maybe one positive thought regarding the SI4CARE project for us to continue with the good work and also to conclude today's podcast with you, Professor.
You want the last word?
Yes, your final thought or maybe a key takeaway related to the SI4CARE project.
The wish, the ambition and the wish that we will be able to continue work together, to exchange ideas, and to be creative in proposing policies for elderly people.
Okay, so everyone listening, today we were with Professor Papageorgiou. Thank you very much for listening. And of course, Professor, thank you very much for your time and for sharing your knowledge.
Thank you very much, Simon.